camera here, so be mindful of that. I'm going to call only those individuals that are on the short list, sometime shortly after the end of business today. In that regard, can you come and give me your cell phone number very quietly? Up here, please. Judge, we've seen your application. Obviously, you went through the appointment process here before. If you want to give an opening statement, maybe something we can glean outside the application.
I believe I've been in front of most all of you before. Mr. Pickett, you weren't here last time, but first want to thank you for your time this morning. Everything is pretty much the same as it was the last time I was here, except for the fact that in January, I moved from a county criminal docket to a circuit family docket. So since January, I've been doing full-time circuit work and have just been making that adjustment and learning how to manage the docket itself, as well as learning how to, learning family law, essentially. So that's pretty much the only change that has taken place. I don't want to take up too much time and welcome any questions that you have.
Thank you. Phil?
Good seeing you. For the members of the board, I had the privilege of practicing law in Shelton over the years, so I think I know everything I need to know.
Good to see you. Thank you.
Jeff?
Hi, Judge.
Hi.
Welcome back. You know, the obvious question that I have is, why are you here today? The rumor mill is you're an excellent judge and you're doing a great job in the county court. Why change?
Well, I've enjoyed doing county work. I'm not doing county work anymore, and I know that's temporary. As long as they keep reviewing the administrative order, I'll remain in place. But and as everyone's aware, from my application, I practiced in circuit court, and at some point wanted to find myself back in the circuit court. So that's why I'm here. I just like the opportunity to be officially, a circuit judge.
Andrew. Andrew.
Good morning.
Good morning.
I've known you for a while. I'm pretty familiar with your background, your experience. What I'm concerned about, and what I think the committee has been concerned about with other applicants, is the ability to run a campaign. And even if you're not appointed, you're going to have to run at some point if somebody challenges you for your county seat. That process is likely to be, well, first of all, when is your term up for county? When would you have to run?
I was just up this past cycle.
Okay,
so.
And you drew no opposition?
Correct.
If you are appointed to this seat, are you aware that you would likely have to run next year?
I'm aware of that.
Help us understand your ability to run a campaign. Are you confident in the support you have from the community in fundraising and name recognition and just general influence to be able to run a campaign that runs not only Brevard County but also Seminole County?
Sure. If I had to run a campaign, you do what you need to do to be able to take the time to do that. I think that my experience in the community prior to being appointed will help me with that. I was involved in a lot of different civic organizations where I've gotten to know a lot of people in the community, business organizations, just general charitable organizations. My husband also is active in the community. He's a practicing attorney. And so together we've gotten to know quite a few people. We also have between our, our school family, church family, different branches that we have, grown within the community itself. So I'm confident that I would have the support to hopefully be successful in the campaign. The challenge would be just, figuring out all the restrictions that are placed upon you as either a candidate or especially as a judge. That's something that's difficult to get your arms around sometimes. But I'm acutely aware of what those restrictions are at this point, and I'm confident that I would be able to get my arms around the process to run a successful campaign.
David?
Hello.
Good morning. So you were asked why you're interested in the circuit court position where you are now. Is there anything about the county court position that you find more of a draw than going to circuit, other than, and, right now obviously your place is family, but putting that aside, is there anything about the typical county position?
Sure. I have to say that the 2 years that I was in county, I thoroughly enjoyed. Part of it does get, your dockets, if you have arraignments or docket sounding or pleas, it can get a little monotonous just in terms of having to do the same thing over the course of one docket. But also at the same time, you have an opportunity to connect with the community in a way that you don't necessarily get to do at the circuit level. So there were a lot of times where people come in, of course this is misdemeanor criminals, so you're not dealing with a higher level crimes, but you have the opportunity sometimes to really speak to people and try to help them understand that they made a mistake. It's not the end of the world. They need to take responsibility, but then they can move on from it and do better. The other part of it from a county perspective is during that period of time, I was the administrative judge for the mental health court, and that was really rewarding. We saw a lot of great results. We had court every other Wednesday, and it's a diversion program, so the function of that docket is completely different. But I really had the opportunity to talk to people and felt like I really, at that level, was making a difference, so to speak.
Andy?
Just going off of your experience as a circuit court judge, have you experienced any difficulties at the circuit court level that you were not able to overcome, or have you been able to hit the ground running?
I mean, I think there's always going to be a transition when you're moving from one division to another. And if you haven't practiced in that particular area, if you haven't presided over that type of docket, there's a transition period. On the one level, I was comfortable pretty much from the get-go from, I guess, the rules of civil procedure and evidence code standpoint. That having practiced in civil law prior to my appointment, those things kind of become second nature to you. I guess the transition has been just trying to figure out how a family docket works. And I think the docket that I took over was somewhat backed up, and so we had to, from the get-go and even before I started, try to sit down and formulate some sort of system that we thought might work to get things flowing the way that we think they should be. And that's kind of an evolutionary process. We're still working on things, but beyond that, it's just sitting down and making sure that I understand what I need to know as a family judge, and knowing how to write judgments and orders that are legally sufficient. It's a lot of work. And that's one thing I didn't realize about the family courts is you can't just make a ruling. I mean, everything requires finding. So it is a lot of work. You have to be willing to put in the work. But I haven't had a problem with that because it's just part of it.
Dan?
Judge, you're getting great reviews from the community and your colleagues on the bench. I was even calling people about it because they made sure they insert that you're doing a great job. Administratively, what's your greatest success and why was it successful?
That's an interesting question. I think that there's two things, and again, because I'm new with all of this, sometimes you don't see the results of certain things until a little further in. But I feel like starting back at the county level, when I took over the docket that I did, again, it was a little backed up. We figured out a way to get it running. Our numbers were down by the time that I transferred divisions. My numbers were at one point the best amongst the county court judges, but they consistently were, 2 or so. So I think I credited that to just being efficient in the courtroom. You want to make sure that everybody's listening, or that you're listening to everybody and you're doing everything that you need to do. At the same time, you have to run your docket in a very efficient manner and do things that make sense. That was a little easier to manage. On the family side of it, again, it's still a process that's evolving, but prior to starting, I had to make a couple changes. I brought on a judicial assistant that's been around for a very long time. She knows what she's doing, and so she helped me sit down and try to formulate a completely different calendar. And so I think that the way that we tried to, at one point they were scheduling trials, I think, before, last quarter of last year, they were starting to schedule into 2020. And so we were able to at least pull back some of that. We are now at that point, but that's after scheduling trials for, I think, collectively 3 full days of case management conferences and scheduling trials. So I think that the system that we put in place in terms of just doing a trial week, having a rollover docket, because presumably a lot of cases will settle, but we want to make sure that in the event a case doesn't settle, there's another week that they have an option of going. So everybody has the opportunity to go to trial. They know they're going to go to trial. And so I think it helps facilitate settlements in that respect too. So we'll see how that goes, but so far it seems to have been working.
What time will you start court?
I start, normally, I'll start at 9 o'clock. It gives me a chance to get in, review any orders that have come in, kind of just catch my breath before getting started. I will start earlier than that if it's requested by the attorneys, or if I'm looking for extra hearing time on the front end of the day, or I'll do the same thing during my lunch period if I need the time. But traditionally, it'll be 9 to noon, and then 1 to 5.
Thank you.
Don?
Good morning, Judge. Nice to see you. I've had the pleasure of vetting you, and as Mr. Gerber said, I've had the same, heard the same wonderful things about you. With now a couple of years of experience on the bench and now newly to family court, you talked about judicial efficiency and some of the opportunities that you've had. Could you please, with the fresh set of eyes in that court, is there anything that you would change from an administration standpoint?
Well, that kind of touches upon what I was talking about a couple minutes ago. We had, I think, coming into it, because I truly, I didn't practice family law, and I never presided over that type of docket, but I knew that it was an intense docket. It was a crowded docket in this particular division. So before even coming in, probably 3 to 4 months ahead of time, we were trying to plan on how to just restructure everything. And a part of that too is really taking the time to review motions when they come in and determining what the appropriate thing to do with the request for a hearing is. Do they need to be sent to mediation first? Do they, does it require, 4-hour hearing versus a 2-hour hearing? Little things like that will help you maximize your docket, and instead of just seeing a motion and setting everything for hearing. And then also, if there's a whole, I guess, opinion as to whether or not date certain trials versus a docket where you're just kind of floating in there, which one's more efficient. If you have the date certainties, the attorneys are happy, they know when they're going to go to trial. But if you cancel, you have a bunch of dead time on your calendar. From a practicing attorney standpoint, I would much prefer the date certainties, much prefer. I think everybody does. So I've tried to implement a hybrid system, and I'm really hoping it works. But until about 60 days outside of their assigned trial week, they are kind of floating, but they know it's within a 5-day period of time. Worst case scenario, if none of the cases settle, they have this secondary week where they know they're going to go. So with that, there's a little bit of flexibility and movement for the attorneys to kind of let us know what their conflicts are within those periods. But I also have enough trials set there that my time is going to be spent trying cases and not sitting in my office.
So we're a little bit pinched for time, so mine's more of a statement than a question to you.
Okay.
As a colleague and as someone I consider a friend, you are a sitting county court judge who I think has, 6 years, 5.5 years left, where you don't have to run a campaign, is that correct? And you're asking to be appointed to a seat where you're going to have to possibly run a campaign within a year. Is this really something? Be careful for what you ask for in life. Is this really something?
Oh, absolutely. There's no doubt in my mind. That's what I want to do.
Any follow-up questions?
Just real quick. You know all the other applicants, or at least know their names. What distinguishes you from the rest?
Well, I think the biggest thing, I think, I know I'm the only judge on the list. I think that there's, and until you do it, you don't realize that there is a lot to learn in just being a judge, whether it's at the county court level or at the circuit level. So I have at least that under my belt. I feel like I'm comfortable with the internal processes, the way things work. And so I think that that's a huge benefit. You know, I know that everybody on the list, you know, I don't have a bad thing to say about anybody. But if I have to say what I think makes me stand out above everybody else, it would be that.
Thank you. Any follow-up questions? Have a nice day.
All right, thank you.